Welcome, this is Ryan with you here to continue through our next video in preparation for orientation. This one is a very important video. It will be one of the longer ones, and I do apologize for that, but it covers things like immigration, health insurance, banking, and other really important things that are part of the student experience, particularly for F1 students. This first slide refers to a document that you'll hopefully have shortly. Basically, it's kind of what we would call the cheat sheet. There's a lot of immigration rules and things that students might need to know about, but many of them are also not something you need to think about every single day. And so this document helps us to kind of break down the most important parts, which we will discuss here, as a slight reminder of just things to know. It's also obviously translated. This example here is of a translation into Arabic, but we have it translated in quite a few other languages. So if you ever need to refer to it, it's sitting right here and waiting for you, and we can always obviously get you copies as well. So without any ado, let's move forward. One of the first things that everybody should know about is their passport. This to me is the most important piece of documentation and identification that anyone can have. The thing that you always need to know about your passport is when it expires. As this slide denotes, if your passport is valid for less than 6 months into the future, it is your job, it is very important to communicate with your embassy about how to get a new passport. Many countries will not let you enter, will not let you travel, will not let you study if your passport is not valid for more than 6 months. We will check passports as well, but this is always something that we ask students to check quickly. So please always be aware of when your passport expires. I know exactly when mine expires, and I kind of hope that everybody else does too, because it's extremely important. With your F1 visa, this is also in your passport. On it, it should denote things like an M under the entries category. This means that you can come and go out of the United States more than once. If you happen to have a number next to it, that is fine. We'll look at that as well, but if so, just let us know, because technically it denotes that you have a limited number of visits, but there are ways to work with that. So if you have something other than an M, you can just let us know. F1 visas do have expiration dates. They can vary. Most of them are for several years, but this is determined by the country that issued the visa. If your visa happens to expire while you're in the United States, that is absolutely not a problem. I will repeat that. If your visa expires while you're in the US, that is okay. As long as your I-20 is valid and you are still a student, that is just fine. It just means that when you leave the United States, that you'll have to visit an embassy and get a new visa. Another thing on your F1 is going to be the duration of status. DS just means how long you can be in the country according to the visa, but again, just like if it expires while you're in the US, that's okay as long as you are in school and as long as you have a valid I-20 and are maintaining your status. This does come up from time to time. It is rare, but it's not something to be afraid about as long as you are essentially doing your job. Something that we will have prepared for you is your I-94 arrival card. This is basically a document that you can access online as well. It basically covers when you enter the country, when you leave the country, when you travel in and out of the country. It's a record that's important to have with you for a series of different things, including getting your driver's license. We just recommend that you always keep it with your I-20. This is obviously an example of an I-20 with all of the different categories, from the biographical information to the academic information. It's extremely important that you always sign at the bottom. If you have not already, please sign and date. It is always best to sign in blue ink just to show that it's original instead of a photocopy. With your I-20, if you ever lose it, that's okay. We can reprint it, but you just have to let us know as soon as possible. On the page 1 section, we do have information about your program start date and your program end date in the academic section. After you have taken your placement tests and we know which classes are right for you, we may update your program end date. Right now, everyone has the same program end date on their I-20, but if somebody places into a higher level or a lower level than other students, they may need more or less time to study. This is very normal. We do it all the time. And if we ever make this change to your I-20, we'll let you know when it's ready and how to come and pick it up. On page 2, we have everyone's favorite, which is our travel signature section. While you are an F1 student, you are allowed to travel all but anywhere. Sometimes individual countries have rules about where students should and should not travel. Right now, we recommend limited travel, obviously, because of the COVID-19 coronavirus considerations. But page 2 is for any travel outside of the United States. Inside the United States, you do not need a signature. You can travel wherever you like. That includes Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico. Any of those places are totally fine, but if you go home, if you go to Canada, if you go to Brazil, you will need a signature. And so page 2 is where a DSO will sign for that. You must have it done before you leave the US. And once you have a signature, it's good for 1 year as well. So please make sure, we ask students all the time, but please make sure that you're thinking about this if you know that you'll be traveling. This slide basically just reiterates what we already told you. When you're traveling, make sure you get the signature. You should carry your I-901, which is the receipt for your SEVIS fee, with you. And if you happen to have a government scholarship, you usually need to ask permission from your sponsor. This is a quick slide. You may have heard the term SEVIS already. SEVIS is the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. Basically, this is a computer database that myself and Sarita, the DSOs at the ELI and at other schools, use to update immigration records. This is something you will never see. Only DSOs have access to it and a few other people. But if you ever hear someone say, oh, let me go check your SEVIS record, let me update that in SEVIS, that just means we're working with that database. And it helps us keep in contact with the government about students and the progress they're making. Now, some of the major F1 regulations. Let's start with academics. First, all ELI students, all F1 students must study full-time. So this means you must attend all of your classes, including online. I know UMBC is moving to online classes right now, but it is expected that you will be in your classes every single time they meet. If you don't attend at least 80% of your classes, you can lose your F1 status. So all classes, face-to-face or online, will be taking attendance. We will be tracking your attendance. If you miss a class, you go from 100% down, and so on and so forth. If you're late, your attendance goes down. If you fall below 80%, you are eligible to be terminated and lose your status. This is extremely rare. You'd have to miss a lot of classes for this to happen, but it's very important that you take this seriously. So please be in class. Teachers expect you to be there. If you're going to miss class, you can bring in a sick note. You can tell your teacher in advance. They may help you with makeup work. But your job as a student is to be in class, and both we, the ELI, as well as the federal government, take that very seriously. Regulations about employment. You as an F1 student can work. That is completely fine, but you have to work on campus. You may not work off campus. That is against the rules. That is against the law. If you want to talk about how to find jobs on campus, we are happy to help you. I will tell you it's competitive, but again, the only place you can work is online. A social security number is not necessarily an F1 regulation, but it is something you will hear a lot. It's a form of identification that most Americans have. I say most because not everybody does, or anyone that has worked in the United States. It is important for many of us, but it is not necessary for an F1 student to have. You don't need it to open a bank account. You don't need it to get a driver's license. But most people that work in these places are very used to asking the question, what's your name, what's your birthday, what's your social security number? If you say you don't have one, they may be confused because they maybe haven't worked with a lot of international students. So we like to remind you it's not necessary. We have several letters that we can help give you that verify you don't have one and you don't need one, but it's something you're probably bound to hear as you get started in your life here in the United States. Other important regulations, in short, just make sure that you tell the ELI if you change your addresses, if you move, we need 10 days to update that in SEVIS. Also, once per year, F1 students must send in a tax form. It's called Form 8843. In this case, that's coming up pretty soon. Even if you don't earn money, it's basically just to show that you were here, you were studying. We are happy to help you to find that information, to tell you how to fill it out, but it is something that is required. Welcome to the United States. We all have to do taxes. This is our plea and our important reminder that basically visa rules change all the time. And it's very possible that your friend has studied here in the past, or a family member, or that even your classmates have information about immigration situations, and that is totally fine, but it's very possible that that has changed since they were using those rules. So if you have questions, please come and talk to an ELI staff member, myself or Sarita in particular, because we get all of our information straight from the government, and we can look things up. Even if we don't know the answer, we can find it for you. And again, we're going to have the most up-to-date information. Onto some things that just refer to life in general. Many of you might be thinking about getting a driver's license. That is totally fine. And we can help you figure out the process as to where to start and where to end. We do ask that you do not apply for your license yet because we must register you in SEVIS first before you go to the MVA, the Motor Vehicle Association, to apply for one. Until then, you can use your valid license from your country to drive in Maryland, but for a short period of time, we do ask you to exercise caution with that, but it is technically an option. Parking at UMBC is something that is a challenge for everyone. If you park at UMBC, you have two options. You can either buy a student parking permit, which makes the most sense. It is only $60 for the entire semester. Or you can park in visitor lots and pay $2 an hour in advance. That will obviously cost more money the longer you do it. If you park in the wrong areas, if you forget to permit or anything along those lines, there are tickets and there are fines. So please be very aware of where you're allowed to park, when you're allowed to park, to make sure that you're avoiding any fees. Banking. You have plenty of options for banking during your time here in the United States. There is a PNC Bank here on campus, so we often recommend that one just because it's very easy to get to. They also have staff members that are very used to working with international students, so they can help you set up an account pretty easily. It may be closed right now because the campus itself is closed, but PNC is a great bank. It's got a lot of branches in the area. However, there are plenty of other banks around that you can use. So please just pick a bank that you're comfortable with, and we're happy to help if you have any particular questions. To echo what I said earlier, this is one of those great situations where you do not need a social security number to open a bank account. Let's take a minute to talk about classes a little bit. The ELI has two tracks of classes. We have intensive English and academic English. Our intensive English program meets every 7 weeks throughout the semester, and that's part of why we have a session 2 orientation. Our academic English program runs for 15 weeks. Right now, you will likely be placed into an IEP class because we are in the middle of the semester, but you'll notice that we have classes in each throughout the semester, and so depending on where you place, that's where we will make sure that you get the right class. Tuition for a session here at UMBC at the ELI is $2,300 for a full-time schedule. Within that, you'll also have, for example, a health insurance fee, which we'll discuss in just a minute, but your tuition is $2,300 for a session, and that will not change. Payment. This is something that's very, very important. We will collect payment for your ELI tuition before you start classes. This is a rule, this is a regulation, there are not exceptions to this. Because all payment has to be done online right now, it can't be done at the cashier's office on campus. You must pay with, I'm sorry, this says cash there, but otherwise you must pay with a credit card or a bank account. There are fees for paying with a credit card. We are happy to help you with payment. Sarita Fouts is here to help with payment, but please be aware that cash and checks will not be accepted right now because of the situation on campus with closures. Again, I cannot echo enough. You must pay your bill before you can begin classes. Please be prepared for that tomorrow. Billing policies here on campus are pretty straightforward. Apart from your initial tuition, anything moving forward will be billed on the 20th day of the next month. So for example, if you go to the doctor and you get a bill, it'll be due to, it's March right now, it'll be due April 20th. If it's not paid by April 20th, then you get late fees that are added and you can be removed from your classes. The ELI cannot remove those late fees. They come from the university. We are not responsible for them. But again, if you haven't paid a bill, you'll be pulled out of class, and that can count against your attendance. So please be sure to check your UMBC email for reminders and to check your student account on My UMBC, because while we are happy to send reminders, it is also your job to make sure that you know what your account looks like and how to pay it. All right, our last major topic here on this PowerPoint, which again I know has been taking a little bit longer than some of the others, is health insurance. As an F1 student at UMBC, you are required to purchase health insurance from the university unless you have a government scholarship that includes insurance in it. This insurance is billed every single session. So every 7 weeks, including through the summer. Now, if it's in the summer session or the winter, it will cover those breaks, and so sometimes health insurance can cost a little more than other sessions, but that's because it's billed by the week. It's not billed by the semester or things like that. It's billed by the calendar. The cost of insurance for spring 2020 session 2 is $470. If you have a spouse or child or any dependents, there is an additional fee for them. This insurance again covers from, actually it's backdated to the 15th, earlier this week, and it will go through essentially the end of May, the end of this semester. The insurance used at UMBC is through a big company called Aetna. It's a very good program that we use. The insurance is medical only, so doctors and hospitals. It does not cover dental and teeth. It does not cover vision. You can add those on if you would like, but the basic health insurance is medical only. There's documentation that we can share with you that covers just exactly how this insurance can cover you medically, what's covered, what's not covered, and there's plenty of information about that online through UMBC's UHS website as well. The ELI will either print for you a paper insurance card or one will come for you in the mail. Basically what this does is it shows when you go to the doctor that you have health insurance and that you can be treated and seen, and that the insurance will help pay for a portion of your bill. If you need medical care before you get that card, that is just fine. We can get that information for you, or you can go straight to UHS. They basically serve as your doctor here at UMBC. As I mentioned, UMBC does have a medical clinic, a hospital, a small hospital here on campus. It basically has what we call bank hours. It's open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can make an appointment or you can go visit the clinic without an appointment. You just may be waiting longer. I'm sure they have different hours right now with the campus closure. Those are things that we can look into or that you can Google as well. They have a very large website with a lot of information on it. Some notes that we always like to share with students about healthcare and health insurance in the United States. We have excellent doctors and excellent medical care, but it is very expensive in the United States. Some countries you may be coming from have government-funded insurance or public medicine where things can be very affordable. Here in the United States it's actually very expensive, and that's why we have health insurance. So whenever you go to see a doctor, please make sure that you always ask if they accept your insurance. A doctor has to treat you. They don't have to accept your insurance. If they don't accept your insurance, your bill could be very, very high. If they do, it will likely be lower and very affordable. A great example is some students, when they begin at UMBC, they need a vaccination, just an injection to make sure that they're healthy. The actual injection costs $300, but with insurance, it costs $30. It's a very different price, obviously. If you ever need to see a specialist or an outside doctor, UHS will happily give you a referral. That just means that they send you to the correct doctor to make sure that you get the best possible treatment, and it will also help keep your costs low. One of the reasons that health insurance is so expensive in the United States is having insurance doesn't make a visit free necessarily. There are things like deductibles, co-pays, and co-insurance that, again, if you receive treatment from a doctor, can be applied, which means that if your bill is much higher, there's still a percentage that you're being charged for within that process. And so these are very common. These are things that you will see and hear if you do continue to visit doctors. We're very used to them here in the United States, and so they're just considerations that you need to keep in mind. To wrap up, I swear this is the last slide on this presentation. Just some notes. Medical care in the United States can be very expensive. So if you are not sure, if you have questions, please visit the front desk or contact the ELI. If you need to go to UHS, if you need to go see another doctor, if you have questions about your insurance or a bill, we're happy to try and help. We are English teachers. We're not medical experts, but we've been doing this for a while, so we are pretty good at least finding the answer or tracking down the right people. Thank you for your patience with this presentation. There is one more video that I'd like you to watch in just a few minutes. You certainly can take a breather between them, but hopefully this is helping at least prepare you to get in the mindset of beginning your studies here at the ELI.